Alright, let's dive right in. Number 11. Sipping coffee. Picture this. Back in the 16th century, enjoying a cup of joe was a capital offense. When this beverage first appeared in the Middle East, it was condemned as the devil's brew. Critics claimed it rendered consumers excessively energized, overtly rebellious, and entirely too talkative. The whole origin story kicked off when a goat owner named Key noticed his flock behaving erratically, almost possessed, after nibbling on some distinct red berries. Instead of concluding, perhaps consuming what turned my goats into raving lunatics is a bad idea, he decided to sample them himself. That, unbelievably, is how coffee was discovered. A man observed his livestock throwing a dance party and decided, I want in on that action. In some regions, authorities would execute coffee drinkers immediately upon capture. They viewed coffee houses as prime breeding grounds for sedition. These establishments were essentially the historical equivalent of a modern internet forum, buzzing with citizens criticizing the ruling power. Sovereigns dispatched undercover agents to these cafes, hoping to intercept discussions of insurgency. Misfire a word while enjoying your beverage, and you could find yourself locked in the deepest cell. Even in Europe, suspicion clung to this Muslim drink. Initially labeled the bitter invention of Satan, that changed abruptly once the Pope sampled it. He found it so delightful that he performed a baptism on it, literally sanctifying the coffee. He proclaimed the drink was far too superb to surrender entirely to the adversary. Fast forward 5 centuries, modern medical professionals now suggest coffee might actually contribute to a longer lifespan. A journey from a death sentence to a health benefit in half a millennium. Number 10. Wearing the shade purple. In ancient Rome, a single fashion decision could lead to your demise. Don purple and you faced instant execution. This was no ordinary hue, it was the ancient world's version of a premium, hyper-exclusive streetwear drop, only far more prestigious. The pigment derived from minuscule marine mollusks known as murex snails. Approximately 12,000 snails were needed just to yield 1 single gram of pure purple coloring. Laborers had to crack open each snail and meticulously extract a solitary drop of violet sludge. This residue was then left to decay and ferment under the sun for multiple days. The stench generated was so overpowering that facilities dedicated to making the dye had to be erected far beyond city limits. The end result was a stunning violet shade that never lost its brilliance. A single outfit dyed purple cost the equivalent of what an average worker earned in an entire year. The emperors consequently decreed that only members of the imperial family could legally wear the color. They maintained special forces deployed solely to catch individuals wearing unauthorized purple attire. They patrolled thoroughfares, stopping citizens to inspect their clothing. Even displaying a minimal purple trim could result in you becoming lion feed. So, the next time you are sporting a purple shirt while grabbing a bite at a fast food joint, remember, you are flexing harder than any ruler of antiquity ever could, and nobody is going to kill you for it. If you've watched this far, please give me a like and subscribe. Since I lost my old channel, I truly need your support. Alright, let's continue now. Number 9. Existing as a lefty. The medieval period was notoriously unkind to those who favored their left hand. Utilizing it was a sure sign you were in league with the devil. Popular belief held that the devil himself was left-handed, meaning anyone who used their offhand must be his associate. The very word sinister actually originates from the Latin term for left. They considered left-handedness so fundamentally corrupt that they enshrined it in a word representing all things malicious. Educators would bind the student's left hand to their back, compelling them to use the right. If instructors caught a child using their devil hand, beatings with rulers were administered. Some distraught parents went so far as to deliberately burn their children's left hands, believing it would save their souls. During the height of witch trials, simply being left-handed provided sufficient grounds for an accusation of sorcery, and those proceedings generally culminated in fire, a considerable amount of fire. Even in some African tribal traditions, using your left hand for cooking could still lead to execution, based on the fear that the inherent evil would contaminate the food. This persecution isn't solely ancient history either. Your grandparents might recall having their hands slapped in school for writing left-handed. Number 8. Consuming potatoes. Europeans initially treated the humble potato as outright poison, which, technically, wasn't entirely inaccurate. They refused to even feed them to their swine. The leaves and stems of the potato plant contain enough toxic material to be lethal. Even the tuber itself can become harmful if stored improperly. If you store potatoes in a warm, unventilated basement, they emit toxic gas. Enough potatoes in a small enclosure can genuinely kill you in your sleep. Frederick the Great of Prussia eventually had to resort to deception to get his subjects to eat them. He cultivated massive fields of potatoes and hired armed security to guard them during the daylight hours. Crucially, though, he instructed the guards to abandon their posts at night, pretending to sleep. Local peasants, seeing these ostensibly priceless plants being protected, immediately began stealing them. The man essentially invented reverse psychology just to popularize potatoes. Later, Marie Antoinette wore potato flowers in her hair to make them fashionable, because nothing screams, "This is safe to eat," quite like wearing it as ornamental jewelry. Then, the Irish figured out potatoes were actually quite delicious. Maybe a little too delicious, but that's a different narrative entirely. Number 7. Kissing in public. In 1562, Naples enacted a ban on kissing. Smooch in public and risk losing your head. The city maintained specialized officers who patrolled thoroughfares, actively seeking couples who were getting too close. Getting caught embracing could easily result in your head mounted on a stake. Later, in 1439, King Henry VI banned kissing across all of Britain. His reasoning was that kissing would facilitate the spread of disease. This is the same monarch who later descended into madness and spent years solely staring at walls. Yet, we were supposed to trust his medical guidance. In 1910, France outlawed kissing at train stations, not due to morality, but because lovers were prolonging their goodbyes excessively, causing trains to run late. The French banned kissing. That's like Switzerland banning chocolate or Canada banning apologizing. Number 6. Coin clipping. Shaving off tiny pieces of currency used to be punishable by death. Back then, coins were not simply stamped metal, as they are now. They were literally composed of gold and silver. The intrinsic value of the coin was determined by the metal itself. Some ingenious folks realized they could shave minute slivers off the edges, accumulate enough shavings, and melt them down for a substantial profit. It was the equivalent of taking tiny bites out of money that actually held inherent worth. Some individuals got remarkably creative with their currency crimes. They would bore small holes in the coin center, refill them with a cheaper metal, and smooth the surface. Others would place coins inside bags and vigorously shake them, collecting and selling the resulting metallic dust. The government interpreted this activity as a direct assault on the entire financial system. Getting caught wasn't merely illegal, it was treason, and treason meant death. The crisis escalated to such a degree that they called in Isaac Newton. Yes, that Newton, the gravity expert. His job was, quite literally, to prevent people from tampering with money. That is precisely why modern coins possess those small ridges on their edges, so you can instantly spot if someone has attempted to clip bits off. A design feature that exists because people kept getting executed for crimes involving currency. Number 5. Growing a beard. Your facial hair could have resulted in a death sentence in specific historical eras. Kings and religious figures viewed beards as a blatant signal of rebellion. If you weren't clean-shaven, you were essentially walking around with a visible sign stating, "I despise the government," written on your face. In ancient Rome, they would forcibly drag you through the streets and publicly shave you. They actually maintained a beard police force who patrolled while carrying razors. Occasionally, they'd take off half your face along with the unwanted whiskers. Peter the Great of Russia escalated this dramatically. He compelled his nobles to line up while he personally sawed off their beards using a rusty razor. Those who resisted had their heads shaved instead, right off their shoulders. If you absolutely insisted on keeping your beard, you were required to pay a special tax. You would receive a small copper token verifying payment, which declared the beard was a useless burden. It functioned, essentially, as a parking permit for your face. No token meant immediate public shaving by the police right where you stood. Number 4. Skipping church. Missing Sunday services wasn't merely frowned upon, it was criminal. In those times, the church was far more than a place of worship. It was a blend of government office, social media platform, and police station all rolled into one. Skip service, and they automatically assumed you were plotting something sinister. They employed actual church police who actively monitored the streets during service hours. These officers would burst into private homes searching for people attempting to hide from worship. Get caught once, and you'd receive a fine. Get caught a second time, and you might face a public whipping. Continue skipping, and they would ultimately conclude you were practicing witchcraft, because, obviously, the only reason one would miss Sunday service is to attend a demon party in the forest. And witch trials ended with someone getting thoroughly toasted. In colonial America, they would lock you in the stocks in the center of town. Your head and hands would be trapped between two pieces of timber while passersby hurled spoiled food at you. Some towns even constructed specialized cages outside the church. You would sit there, like a disgraced parrot, while everyone walked by. These mandatory attendance laws were not relegated to ancient history either. Some regions still enforced required church attendance until the 1960s. Number 3. Falling asleep during church. Dozing off mid-sermon could earn you far more than simple embarrassment. There's even a biblical reference to a man who fell asleep during one of Paul's exceptionally lengthy sermons and tumbled right out a third-story window. In medieval times, special officials known as tithing men patrolled the church aisles armed with long sticks. These were not gentle prodding implements, they resembled baseball bats with a sharp end. Their sole mandate was to walk around hitting anyone who appeared drowsy. Some churches featured specific cages where they would lock up sleepers. You'd be trapped there while everyone walked past, pelting you with spoiled produce. The Puritans were particularly harsh on church sleepers. They perceived falling asleep as a sign of demonic possession, arguing that only Satan would make you tired during a 6-hour sermon detailing how everything enjoyable is wicked. Get caught sleeping too frequently, and they might decide you required an exorcism, and their version of exorcism typically involved a great deal of fire. Number 2. Marrying outside your social class. Love that crossed social boundaries was once considered a transgression worse than actual murder. Your biological family would literally prefer to see you dead than wed to someone deemed beneath your station. Consider the 5th Earl of Berkeley, who became infatuated with Mary Cole, a butcher's daughter. That's essentially the historical equivalent of a billionaire marrying someone who works in his warehouse. They were forced to conceal their relationship for more than a decade. When they finally went public, their children were barred from inheriting anything, solely because they were born prior to the official, proper wedding. In 1825, a wealthy 70-year-old gentleman married his 21-year-old dairymaid. The resulting scandal was so vast that it made modern celebrity gossip seem like trivial small talk. His family attempted to have him legally declared insane, arguing that clearly only a lunatic would marry for love. Wealthy families would hire actual kidnappers to seize their children before they could elope. They would be locked in remote country estates until they supposedly came to their senses. Your family would completely sever all ties. They would go so far as to stage fake funerals and inform everyone that their child had passed away. Finally, number 1, washing your hands. The medical establishment of the 1800s would utterly destroy you for suggesting that physicians should clean their hands. Doctors routinely moved straight from dissecting deceased bodies to assisting in childbirth. They might have residue from corpses still lodged under their fingernails while helping women deliver, and they deemed this entirely acceptable. Then, Ignaz Semmelweis noticed a peculiar trend. The death rate in his hospital wards was substantially higher when doctors performed autopsies immediately before delivering babies. So, he mandated that doctors wash their hands using a chlorine solution. The death rate plummeted dramatically, dropping from 18% to just 2%. But other physicians were profoundly offended. They countered, "We are gentlemen. Gentlemen do not have dirty hands." They took immense pride in their bloodied coats as a badge of experience. Nothing screams professional expertise like 3-day-old corpse fragments beneath your fingernails. The entire medical community turned against Semmelweis. They ensured he was dismissed from his post. Afterward, they had him forcibly committed to an asylum, where the guards ultimately beat him to death. All because he suggested medical professionals should simply wash their hands. That concludes the list for today.